Fellas, we got some news about weapon crafting inside of Destiny 2 through an exclusive interview with Polygon and Joe Blackburn and Justin Truman. Starting with the title here, Destiny 2's weapon crafting won't be like other MMOs according to Bungie. Weapon crafting will finally enter the Destiny universe in Destiny 2 The Witch Queen on February 22nd, 2022. Bungie hasn't revealed a great deal of information about the system just yet, but we spoke to Destiny game director Joe Blackburn and general manager Justin Truman about how weapon crafting works and what it brings to Destiny and the benefits of the crafting only weapon, the Glaive. At last week's Destiny showcase, Bungie representatives referred to the crafting system as being combat based, but never gave further explanation. In the original Destiny, weapons would drop for players with locked perks, and players would defeat enemies and spend resources to unlock weapons' full potential. That's right, you actually had to level up the weapon. Bungie's description left us thinking Destiny 2's crafting would follow a similar situation, but as usual, the studio doesn't just want to repeat the past. This is definitely a more in-depth system than anything we had in the original Destiny, Blackburn said. We really want you to feel like you're building a bond with anything that you're super passionate about. But the crafting in Witch Queen won't resemble crafting in other loot-based RPGs either. I think we all have the MMO, hey, how do I level up and do crafting? And it's like, well, I make 1,000 of this bad pickaxe, and then I make one thing that I care about. And that's what crafting is, Blackburn said. We really wanted to feel more sacred, more special, and we want you to have this sort of long relationship with your weapons. And when you master a weapon, we want you to feel like, yeah, I've put some time in, and I've put in some grease, and I feel like an expert with this thing. And so I don't think you can feel like an expert if you're, driving around destinations, picking up grass, and then you're like, yeah, I turn all this grass into a gun. Okay, that's pretty good. What he's trying to say is we're not going back to like D1, or we're just collecting resources at a destination for hours on end. And that used to be the only way we could get resources, by the way. Now, Blackburn went on to suggest that the weapon crafting system won't play into Destiny 2's current economy either. A veteran player like myself, with more resources than I know what to do with, won't have a distinct advantage over a new player who is barely able to scrape enough legendary shards together to buy an exotic from Xur each week. This is a pretty new system from the ground up, Blackburn said. All right, so that means it's gonna have completely new materials, making it fresh for whoever is jumping into Destiny 2, whether you're a veteran player or a new player. Now, while Blackburn and Truman wouldn't paint a clear picture of weapon crafting outside of how it wouldn't work, we did speak a bit more in depth about the new Glaive weapon type, which will come in both legendary and exotic flavors. The Glaive is a spear that's 3 weapons in one. It shields, it shoots, and it stabs. It's a weapon of multiple firsts for Destiny, being the first crafting only weapon and the only first person melee weapon, as opposed to swords and relic type weapons pulling the player into a third person perspective. The Glaive is differentiated not only by its acquisition and camera perspective, but also its ammo type and flexibility. We've had melees before, but this is also in the energy and special, like this is a green ammo weapon, Blackburn said, contrasting the heavy ammo players need to deal damage with swords. We haven't had this style. Even if you're out of ammo, with the Glaive, you can stab something. Even if you need to reload, you can stab something. I think the first time someone picks up a Glaive and they put swashbuckler on it, they're like, oh, I just won't reload then. I'll just stab things and shoot things forever. No lie, that would be crazy. Get swashbuckler ×5 and just run around poking everything. Now, Blackburn wouldn't go into detailed description of how the Glaive works, but that quote gives us some interesting clues. First, players will need to reload their Glaive for one reason or another, be it to shoot the energy blast, use the shield, or another unknown purpose. And Glaives will have a wider influence on your loadout, as ammo is only required for one aspect of the weapon, with melee-focused players seemingly not needing ammo at all. That is interesting. I don't really know if it's going to do full damage. Like, I know it says that the melee portion of the Glaive doesn't need ammo, but maybe the heavy attack does, or maybe the light attack would scale more damage if you had ammo. Now, Blackburn also suggests that players can directly place a perk like Swashbuckler onto a Glaive with the crafting system. Swashbuckler offers bonus damage stacks on kill and maxes out the stacks immediately after a melee kill, making the perk ideal for a weapon like the Glaive. This lends credence to the idea that players will be able to directly select certain perks for their weapons via the crafting system. As for why players would use a Glaive over other weapons, especially in difficult content, Blackburn spoke about its main benefit: encroachment. We look at this as a weapon that that really allows you to encroach on encampments, Blackburn said. You can imagine something like, oh my god, the Hive Guardian just died. Its ghost is back there. There's a Shrieker in the back. I don't have time to kill the Shrieker, so you pop the Glaive shield and walk up to the ghost and smash the ghost. As a range weapon, the Glaive lives in the short to medium range category, and the developers use the phrase fusion rifle-y to describe it rather than the more close range shotguns. Between its melee prowess, its range blast, and its shield, the Glaive is about being the Swiss Army knife of long pointy sticks. It offers the ability to melee enemies quickly while you're low on ammo, blast powerful foes to bits from range, and use the shield to protect yourself while resurrecting a friend in some of the game's hardest content. As far as the Crucible, Blackburn assured us that the team has made some really smart calls on PvP. Bungie doesn't want players to have immediate access to the shield, allowing them to fend off attacks immediately when they spawn with special ammo. Interesting. The shield has to be beefy, guys, for them to keep bringing it up. Like, it doesn't sound like the block ability on swords. Like, it sounds like more. The duo didn't go into detail on how the team is solving that problem, just that it's something they've all thought about and have a solution for. Outside of the Glaive's usefulness and how players will put it together, Blackburn seemed most excited about how it looks on players' backs. You see people walking around the tower, and they look like they're coming out of a Knight's Tale or something because they got that massive thing sticking off their backs, Blackburn said. With some of Destiny 2's bows already spanning the length of their Guardians, we'll be spending the next 6 months vividly imagining how the Glaives will one-up their medieval cousins. Alright guys, that is just some information I wanted to share with y'all. I know it doesn't seem like a lot here, but any information we can get on weapon crafting interests me. The fact that the Glaive can't be obtained in any way but through crafting. And it's obvious that the more you use the Glaive, and maybe there's some challenges associated with the Glaive, like getting a certain amount of precision kills with its ranged form, or blocking a certain amount of damage, unlock certain perks. The question is, will Bungie just give every perk in the game an opportunity to be slotted onto the Glaive? And then the other question is, where does it stop? Now, confirmed in the reveal, and we even went over this in our essential details for the Witch Queen, all the weapons going forward, including the Throne World weapons, will all be craftable. And they even stated that your legacy weapons will also get to a point where they will be craftable. Guys, what I'm envisioning here is the game retroactively recognizing how many kills you got with a certain weapon. Say for instance, you got a palindrome, and the game's like, all right, this guy has like 15,000 kills with palindrome. Boom. Give him maximum weapon crafting for Pally. Let him craft whatever he wants to craft on it. Pick whatever rolls he wants. Guy's got 15,000 kills. He's earned it. And there's something to be said for that, because in Destiny, everything is RNG based and everything is locked to whatever activity that weapon drops from. But I love the idea of a long-term commitment with a certain weapon. You can get a fire team together and do GM Nightfalls and get adept palindromes and adept shadow prices and whatever weapons when your fire team is available. But wouldn't it be nice when your fire team isn't available to load up into an activity with that weapon and get kills with that weapon, grinding toward the goal of ultimate weapon crafting supremacy for that gun? Now, will it have a limitation in its perks? Will its perk rolls be different than from its loot sources? I don't know. Again, this is going to be completely dependent on how Bungie rolls this out, but if they do this correctly, and I have a lot of faith in Blackburn and Truman, I don't think they would be giving us a system like this for it to just be discarded. Think Curse of Osiris, right? And it's like supposed crafting system. I think Umbra Ingrams have done a good job, and we even have weapon rolling back inside of Destiny 1, but this system seems completely different. It seems to take the RNG out of the game and reward hardcore grinding. Now, big shout out to my man Tim Clark at PCGamer, who actually went into a little more depth here with weapon crafting. And in his conversation, Joe opened up a little more, saying that crafting is about finally delivering the fantasy that you can make the gun that you've always wanted. And we want you to feel like you went on a journey to get there, because by the time you're able to make the exact god roll, you will have the ability to make all the versions of the gun that you want. So it's really about a long pursuit with a weapon. And we think if you're willing to spend that amount of time with the gun, we're okay with you being able to craft whatever version you want. Now, Blackburn also noted the side benefit of having more deterministic loot system is that players will no longer need to store hundreds of versions of the same gun in their vault. Hallelujah. The upshot should be that if the meta changes in terms of which weapon archetype or perks are good, players will just be able to adjust relatively painlessly by crafting a new role. Of course, with February still way off, this is all subject to change, and it's also important to emphasize that you will still be limited by by the gun's original list of perks it can roll with. But the specific example below certainly sounds like exactly what I want from weapon crafting. So Tim actually brings up an example here. Let's assume, hypothetically, that there's a 600 round per minute stasis auto rifle in the Witch Queen, and my white well is for it to have the overflow and headstone perks. Oh, that's nasty. Is the way it works that gradually I'm going to be picking off the perks until I have them all available to craft. From Joe Blackburn here? Yep. And I mean, without getting too specific, we still want guns to have unique identities, but when you go in for the first time and see the recipe of possible perks, you're like, okay, this is all the things I could do on this gun? This is the possibility space. All right, interesting how he answered that. Notice how he mentions the possibility space, the recipe. I think there is going to be a difference in roles between the weapon's drop source and its weapon crafting source. Now, which one has the god roll? That's just going to depend on the weapon and of course the meta. And maybe weapon crafting will get to the point where it will unlock all perks, even perks that only drop from its loot source. Where it gets interesting is when we start dabbling in adept territory, and we are going to be getting a lot more adept weapons. Regardless, if there's one thing to be said about weapon crafting, it is more deterministic. It will reward you for grinding. And in a game like Destiny 2, where there are so many weapons and so many things to grind for, weapon crafting is a system that definitely needs to happen. And I'm glad it's happening. So guys, let me know in the comments below what you think of all this. Again, some of the details we already kind of assumed, but you know, getting little notes here, like by the time you're able to make the exact god roll, you will have the ability to make all the versions of the gun that you want. That pretty much spells out complete weapon crafting. I'm still a little skeptical about the loot source and of course adept loot mainly, but as far as the rest of the loot in the game, it seems like we're gonna have complete freedom here in how we want to make our very own god roll. By the way, guys, if you're interested in these articles, they will be linked down below in the description. Tim has actually got a bunch of other stuff that we'll be covering in the next video as well. Fellas and ladies, thank you all for coming and watching, and as always,
slap that like button like your mama told you right.